ready to begin. This Planning Commission meeting is called to order. This meeting has been properly noticed and posted in compliance with the open meeting law. We're live on KCLV Channel 2, and this meeting will be rebroadcast Saturday at 10 a.m., the following Monday at midnight, and Tuesday at 5 a.m. and 6 p.m. Would everyone please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Flangus.
Here.
Vice Chair Moody.
Here.
Commissioner Goins.
Present.
Commissioner Truesdell.
Present.
Commissioner Quinn. Here. Commissioner Schlottman.
Present.
Commissioner Bonar.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I call your attention to the information printed in your agenda concerning our actions and the appeal and review process, if appropriate. Please read this carefully, and if you have any questions, staff is available. Also, the second page of the agenda contains our rules of conduct. We appreciate your adhering to these rules so we can have a smooth meeting. Thank you. To the item number 4, public comment. All comments made under this item for specific action items will be cross-referenced to those items. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak under this portion of the agenda? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to item number 5. As to the minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes of Planning Commission meeting of January 8th, 2013?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries. Let's move on to our housekeeping items. Are there any items that commissioners, staff, applicants, or members of the public would like to pull forward for action?
Mr. Chairman, item 13, the applicant has requested this item be tabled. Tabled items must be brought back to the Planning Commission at the applicant's request within 6 months, or they do expire. Items brought back to the Planning Commission are required to be re-notified at the applicant's expense. Items 18, 30 through 33, and 35, the applicants have requested these items be obeyed to the March 12, 2013 Planning Commission meeting. And then items 28 and 29, the applicants have requested these items be obeyed to the April 9th, 2013 Planning Commission meeting. Certainly through you, Mr. Chairman, items 28 and 29, the applicants have requested those items be obeyed to the April 9th, 2013 Planning Commission meeting. Items 18, 30 through 33, and 35. Those go to the March 12th.
Does anyone wish to speak on any of these items? Seeing none, Commissioner Moody, would you please make a motion on these housekeeping items?
Regarding item 13, move to table that item. Items 18, 30 through 33, and item 35 move to obey until the March 12, 2013 meeting, and items 28 through 29 obeyed until April 9th.
Thank you. Please vote. Please post. Motion carries. Moving on now to the one motion, one vote portion of the agenda. The following items that may be considered in one motion, one vote, they are considered routine, non-public, and public hearing items. All public hearing items and non-public hearings will be opened at one time. Any person representing an application or a member of the public or a member of the Planning Commission not in agreement with the conditions and all standard conditions for the application recommended by staff should request to have that item removed from this part of the agenda. Beginning with item number 7, which is SUP 47802. Applicant is Eats LLC. The owner is Great Wash Park LLC. For possible action on a request for a special use permit for a supper club in conjunction with an existing 21,239 square foot restaurant and beer wine cooler on and off sale establishment with a waiver to allow a 141-foot distance separation from a city park where 400 feet is the minimum required at 420 South Rampart Boulevard, Suite 150. This is in Ward 2, Councilman Beers. Staff is recommending approval. The next item is item number 8, which is SUP 47803. Applicant owner is Wilshire Plaza LLC. For possible action on a request for a special use permit for a proposed retail establishment with accessory packaged liquor off sale at 5247 West Charleston Boulevard in Ward 1, Councilwoman Tarkanian. Staff is recommending approval. Next item is item number 9, SUP 47822. Applicant is Walgreen Corporation. The owner is Fred and Jill Vogel Properties 1 LLC. For possible action on a request for a special use permit for a proposed retail establishment with accessory packaged liquor off-sale use within an existing 17,124 square foot general retail store at 9300 West Sahara Avenue, Ward 2, Councilman Beers. Staff is recommending approval. The next item is item 10, SDR 47812. Applicant owner is Volunteers in Medicine of Southern Nevada. For possible action on a request for a site development plan review for a proposed 12,000 square foot clinic on 1.36 acres on the east side of Martin L. King Boulevard, approximately 60 feet north of Madison Avenue, in Ward 5, Councilman Barlow. Staff is recommending approval. Is there anyone that wishes to be heard on any of these items? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion, please.
Move for approval of items 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the one motion, one vote portion of the calendar.
Thank you. Please vote. Please post. Motion carries. Items number 7 through 10 are approved.
Mr. Chair, items 7 through 10 are all final action in the absence of an appeal within 10 days.
Moving on to the public hearing items, we'll begin with item number 11 and item number 12. Item number 11 is abeyance MOD 47016. The applicant is DR Horton, Inc., owner, TG Family, LP, for possible action on a request for a major modification of the Town Center Land Use Plan to amend the special land use designation from EC-TC, Employment Center Mixed Use to Town Center, to ML-TC, Medium Low Density Residential Town Center, on 36.36 acres at the northeast corner of Gilcrease Avenue and Fort Apache Road. It's in Ward 6 for Councilman Ross, and staff is recommending approval. Item number 12, which is a related item, was in abeyance SDR 47017 for possible action on a request for a site development plan review for a proposed 293-lot residential development with a waiver of the Town Center single-family residential street standards and an associated encroachment into the public rights-of-way. Staff is recommending denial. Staff, may we have the report, please?
Mr. Chairman, the site is located within the Town Center Master Plan area. When the Town Center Development Standards Manual was adopted in 2001, this area was designated as a major employment center. Since then, the area has been developed primarily as a residential area. to such an extent that there is now limited opportunity to develop the employment center as originally planned. For this reason, staff supports the requested major modification of the land use designation. The proposed subdivision meets all standards for ingress, egress, landscaping, and open space. However, the applicant is requesting a waiver to deviate from the design standards for the town center residential streets. Staff does not support the requested waiver and recommends denial of the site development plan review.
Thank you, and if we could hear from the applicant, please, if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. My name is Bob Gronauer, 8345 West Sunset Road. In this matter, I'm representing D.R. Horton, the applicant in this matter. With respect to item number 11, this is a major modification request, as staff has mentioned. We're asking to change it from the land use designation of employment center to medium-low density. By doing so, we're actually taking down the intensity and density that you can have on this property. It's approximately 36 acres. We're proposing a single-family residential development just under 8 units to the acre. A matter of fact, if you can look on the overhead itself, a few months ago, you approved a similar project just to the north of us, if I could get your attention to the overhead. Or maybe not. Okay, if you could zoom in a little bit, the pink area is the property that is being requested for the modification and on the site development plan review for tonight. The area that's highlighted in orange to the north side of Grand Teton, this Planning Commission just recently approved a similar application. As a matter of fact, with that approval to the north there for D.R. Horton, who is representing the same applicant, we came in asking for the 4-foot sidewalk, 4-foot amenity zone, which it was approved for that project. And as you can see here is a portion of some of the streets that are already in the northwest town center. This is a portion of a Part E development that's in existence now for several years, that there are hundreds of lots on these type of street sections of what we're proposing. So with that being said, we would ask you to approve the application, obviously the major modification, and then also the site development plan review with the understanding that we're going to be coming in with 4-foot of amenity zone and 4-foot sidewalk that has already been approved and existing in town center, and that was just recently approved for a similar project for D.R. Horton.
Thank you, sir. Now, I will now open this up for public comment. If anybody wishes to be heard, please come forward.
Thank you, Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. That looks nice, but all in all, I'm disappointed in what town center is turning out to be. It's not what it was originally laid out or presented to us some years ago, but that looks nice.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion of this and open it up for discussion with the commissioners. Commissioner Bonar?
Mr. Chairman, could you just clarify what kind of curb, because there was some questions about, or discussion about rolled curb versus L curb?
Yes.
And is the amenity zone, regardless of the type of curb, a clear 4-foot, or might it be encroached upon by the wider or the rolled curb?
That's a very good question, and the answer is we are proposing to do an L curb with a 4-foot amenity zone and a 4-foot sidewalk.
Thank you.
My understanding is if there's any changes, we would have to come back with a new site development plan review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard on the commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Regarding item 11, which was obeyed on MOD 47016, move to follow staff's recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Please vote. Please post. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, regarding item number 12, SDR 47017, I'm satisfied by the representations I've heard that we will maintain the 4-foot amenity as well as sidewalk and move for approval with regard to that item, subject to all conditions and the representations made tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. Please vote. Please post. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, and have a great night.
Mr. Chair, those items will go forward to the March 20th City Council meeting.
Thank you.
Moving on now to item number 14, abeyance GPA 47449, applicant owner City of Las Vegas, for possible action on a request to adopt an updated housing element and revise the 2020 master plan. This affects all wards. Staff is recommending approval, and staff, may we have the report, please?
Mr. Chair and members of the Commission, you have before you this evening an updated housing element. Housing element is one of the 19 elements that's currently required by Nevada revised statutes. Before I get started in terms of the presentation, let me just quickly acknowledge our long-range staff who've been working over the past year to prepare this, and then also members of the Economic and Urban Development Department who assisted us with doing this update. In terms of the document itself, the housing element was first approved back in 2001. As conditions have changed significantly here in the Las Vegas Valley, we felt it was an appropriate time to update the document. A significant portion of the work that we did was relative to demographics and projected growth patterns here in the Las Vegas Valley, and so that was a large part of our task in updating the element. In terms of the implementation of the document itself, I'm happy to report that there are 14 action items that staff has completed, and so we're removing those from the last portion of the document, and we've added 5 new implementation action items, just briefly covering what those address. Number 1 is relative to the development of walkable community plans, which we've been working on for the last couple of years. So it speaks to those and also the importance of renovating public infrastructure in our existing mature residential neighborhoods. Also, one of the new implementation items talks to the issue of neighborhood stabilization funds to address the issues of foreclosed homes in neighborhoods and issues with short sales. We also have an item that talks about partnering with a nonprofit or other public agencies to use neighborhood stabilization funds to provide affordable housing. And then finally, we have a couple of items that talk to design standards for residential neighborhoods, acknowledging the work that we've recently done in adopting complete street standards and connectivity requirements. Ultimately, these requirements are to assist in improving the design of our residential neighborhoods. With that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have relative to this update of the housing element.
Thank you, Director. We'll now open this up for public comment. Does anybody wish to be heard on this matter?
Thank you. Todd Farley, 240 North 19th Street. In the original housing element, there was a section in there that dealt with energy efficiency. And what I keep seeing all the time are roofs designed in this Tuscany fair or whatever. And the problem with that is that you cannot orientate the solar collectors or for the energy efficiencies that are required in the 2020 master plan. So I would hope that in the next update that they would address that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion and open it up for discussion with the commission.
Chairman, just one quick comment. During the last meeting, I wanted to have this item held in abeyance for a month, and over the course of the past month, I've been able to get together with these residents, and after reviewing this, the first 40, 45 pages is basically backup information and our requirements due to NRS. And then after going through the 40 or 39 action items, they didn't have any further comments on this. So I feel good about going ahead and passing this and sending it on to council tonight.
Anybody else wish to be heard? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll be happy to make that motion on item 14, GPA 47449, move for approval.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, that item will go forward to City Council on March the 20th.
Now move on to the next group. This is going to be item 15, 16, and 17, which are all related, starting with item 15, which was abeyance GPA 47595, applicant owner 1600 South Valley View Road Holdings LLC. For
Excuse
possible
me,
action,
Director, I'm going to abstain from these items because my mom lives there, so I'll take a back seat to this. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Commissioner Quinn. Then pick up on item 15 where I left off, for possible action on a request to amend the 2020 Master Plan land use from L low-density residential to ML medium-low-density residential on 2.32 acres at 3900 West Oakey Boulevard in Ward 1, Councilwoman Tarkanian. Staff is recommending approval. Item number 16, which was abeyance ZON 47594, for possible action on a request for rezoning from RE residential estates to R2 medium-low density residential. Staff is recommending approval. And item number 17, abeyance renotification SUP 47592, applicant owner 1600 South Valley View Road Holdings LLC, for possible action on a request for a special use permit for the conversion of 3 existing senior citizen apartment buildings to assisted living apartments. Staff is recommending approval, and staff, may we have the report, please?
Mr. Chairman, with regard to the general plan amendment and the rezoning, the proposed changes are consistent with the densities and zoning districts of the surrounding properties and will allow for the requested assisted living apartments use within the 3 senior citizen apartment buildings. The intensity of uses on the site will not increase, and no additional units are proposed. The assisted living apartments use itself is compatible with the adjacent residential uses and will provide a needed service to the residents. Staff recommends approval of each request with conditions on the special use permit.
Thank you. Now I'd like to hear from the applicant. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Lucy Stewart, 3900 Meadows Lane.
Brian Hardy with the law firm of Marquis Arbach Coughing from 4104 Perfect Lure.
Tammy Sargent, business manager of 1600 South Valley View.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Commission. As staff indicated, this is a general plan amendment, so the 3 buildings, which are actually 1 building because they're connected, can be converted from a senior apartment to an assisted living. And so that really just allows the existing residences to, instead of moving out and moving to another, more assisted living, an assisted living somewhere else, they can actually just relocate or maybe stay in the same building if they happen to live there, and just get the assistance that they need. You know, if they need reminders about medication or help with their oxygen, or they may even need to have some medication dispensed. It'd be like the step in between a nursing home and the individual living. So this way they get to still hang around with their friends, they get to live there, they know the staff, and so it's just another level of comfort for them. So if they needed to go someplace, like a nursing home, they'd actually have to leave the premises. So there won't be any additional parking. In fact, the parking requirement goes down. As required by the general plan amendment, we did have a neighborhood meeting, and that was back in December, and I don't know that any of the neighbors had a concern about this use. They just had some issues and some concerns about, I guess people jumped the wall and cut across the facility and then get out to Valley View and go further east. So the Destinations has actually been working with the neighbors. They've got the neighbors to finally agree on what they wanted. They wanted, I think, the wall height increased, and then wrought iron on the top, and they just selected the wrought iron, and I think they anticipate it being complete by the end of next week. So, be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. We'll now open this up for public comment. Does anybody wish to be heard on this matter? And please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Todd Farlow. I'm curious, is there any additional safety concerns when you move it from senior citizen to assisted living, like fire exits and egress and that?
Thank you. I'll have the applicant address that after we close the public hearing portion. Does anybody else wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion, and I'll just ask that the applicant address that question if possible.
Actually, there are some different code requirements by shifting from senior living to assisted living, and so they're actually going in and retrofitting and increasing the sprinklers. And again, because it is assisted living, then they actually probably are more attentive and have more staff located in those buildings, so if something occurs, they can assist people to get out. But everybody's pretty much ambulatory that's going to be in that facility. It may be ambulatory with an assistive device, but so, like I said, anybody who'd be bedridden wouldn't be at that location. So there is, but I think all the precautions have been taken care of.
Thank you. We'll now open it up for discussion amongst the commission. Commissioner Goins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How's the parking right now? Because I've had a couple calls today where people say this is really, there is no parking. But I understand you say by going to assisted living, you're decreasing the parking?
The parking requirement does decrease because really the people who are in assisted living don't drive as frequently. We would hope that people would come to see them more often, but unfortunately that doesn't occur. But they meet code, and in fact, by going to an assisted living with this building or these 3 buildings, the parking requirement goes down. So then, in theory, they should have an excess of parking.
So when you have, when people need assistance from medical personnel, do they park in the normal stalls that are there for visitors? Or is there a designated parking area for them, or what?
We have open parking that's available for everybody, and then we also have the covered parking for residents and their guests. So there's actually ample parking around that building for Oki.
Okay.
And I'll just say and maybe...
Because I had somebody call me today that said they couldn't even find a parking space, and they went to visit somebody, and so it was pretty much packed, but, you know.
And there's parking outside the gate, and then there's parking inside the gate, and they may have been inside the gate where the residents park, but every time I've gone there, there's been plenty of parking, but outside the gate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to follow staff's recommendation for approval of item 15.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries, noting the abstention of Commissioner Quinn. Moving on, I'm sorry, go ahead,
With
Director.
regards to item 16, move for approval subject to all staff's conditions.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries, again noting the abstention of Commissioner Quinn.
And the last item, item 17, move for approval subject to all staff's conditions.
Please vote. Please post. The motion carries for item 17, again noting the abstention of Commissioner Quinn. Director?
And Mr. Chair, these items will go forward to the March 20th City Council meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to this next group of items, which are all related. This is item number 19, item number 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Beginning with item number 19, MOD 47606, applicant is Astoria Residential, owner THM Enterprises LLC, for possible action on a request for a major modification of the Lone Mountain West Master Development Plan to amend the future land use designation from MFM, multifamily medium residential, to L, low-density residential, and to amend tables 1 through 4 of the Master Development Plan, Section 2.2, to reflect changes to the land use categories and number of residential units on 13.81 acres adjacent to the east side of the Pooley Drive alignment south of Lone Mountain Road, Ward 4, Councilman Anthony. Staff is recommending approval. Item number 20, ZON 47605, for possible action on a request for rezoning from U, undeveloped, PCD Planned Community Development, General Plan Designation, to PD Planned Development on 16.40 acres adjacent to the south side of Peaceful Dawn Avenue, approximately 630 feet west of Cliff Shadows Parkway. Staff is recommending approval. Item number 21, VAR 47607, for possible action on a request for a variance to allow 6-foot perimeter retaining walls where 3.5 feet is the maximum allowed on 55 gross acres at the southeast corner of Lone Mountain Road and Pooley Road. Staff is recommending denial. Item number 22, VAR 47609, for possible action on a request for a variance to allow 40-foot wide private streets with no sidewalks where 47-foot wide streets with sidewalks and amenity zones on both sides are required. Staff is recommending denial. Item number 23, VAC 47611, for possible action on a petition to vacate public rights-of-way and U.S. government patent easements generally located east of Pooley Road, south of Lone Mountain Road. Staff is recommending denial. Item number 24, SDR 47610, for possible action on a request for a site development plan review for a proposed 328-lot single-family residential development. Staff is recommending denial. Staff, may we have the report, please?
Mr. Chairman, the modification to the Lone Mountain West Master Development Plan would allow for the entire site to be developed with single-family dwellings. This proposal is consistent with the pattern of low-density development on the adjacent properties, and staff recommends approval. Staff also recommends approval of the rezoning, as the PD zone is the appropriate mechanism for implementing a master plan development. The design of the development deviates from the recommendations and requirements of the Lone Mountain West design standards with respect to building and perimeter wall heights and with Title 19 complete street standards. In addition, this design would likely place an increased traffic burden on adjacent roadways. Staff therefore recommends denial of the remaining items. There were 11 approvals and 15 protests received after publication.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from the applicant, please, and please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Robert Cunningham, 6030 South Jones Boulevard, Suite 100, with Tanny Engineering, representing Astoria Homes. Also with me tonight is Mr. Tom McCormick.
Tom McCormick, Astoria Residential, 10655 Park Run Drive, number 230, Las Vegas, 89144.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would concur with the staff recommendations for approval on the zone change and the major modification, and we would respectfully request approval of our variances. I'd like to go over them a little. Move over here to the site plan. This site is narrow generally and has approximately 80 feet of elevation difference from the west to the east side of the property. In accommodating that elevation difference with our lots, we're finding it necessary to have retaining walls upwards of 6 feet to accommodate the grade differential. My understanding is that because of the steepness of the site, This would be a normal, if we were in just a regular area, Title 19 would allow for up to 6-foot high retaining walls, but because we're in the Lone Mountain West Master Plan, it's stipulated in there, you're not allowed to have retaining walls over 3.5 feet high roughly. So we would respectfully ask for your approval for us to build retaining walls, and what we're doing here is we're terracing the site with a street here that's at one elevation and then scarping as much as we possibly can, and still we need retaining walls in this area and several other areas down in here to accommodate the grade differential. The other variance we're requesting is a variance of the street improvements. Almost all of the adjacent subdivisions in this Lone Mountain West area are built out with the exact same street section we're requesting, which is a 40-foot street with roll curb on both sides of the street, no sidewalk, no amenity zones. We understand the city has changed their standard to require amenity zones and public street standards on private streets, but we would respectfully ask that you would approve this so that it could match into what the adjacent neighborhood is built out as. They're all private streets on site, so there's no issue with the maintenance of them. It will all be on the homeowners associations. With that, the vacation, there are multiple patent easements throughout the entire assemblage of the 55 acres. We're requesting that they all be vacated. I believe staff has recommended denial of that simply because they don't agree with the general site plan and the variances. The site plan, as you can see, it's 328 lots in 3 distinct neighborhoods. We have one neighborhood up here that is has a gated entrance off of Peaceful Dawn. We have another neighborhood that is on these 15 acres that goes from Peaceful Dawn to Stange, and we have another neighborhood south of Stange all the way to our south boundary line. Comprises 3 separate distinct neighborhoods of 3 different homes types and product types. There will be multiple model complexes throughout the entire subdivision. This entire site requires quite a bit of infrastructure. We're required to put in a water booster pump house right here on this parcel right here to bolster the pressure so that the entire site works. There's quite a bit of grading involved in this steep site with quite a few ravines that come into the site. That's why we've accommodated them through several different openings in our western boundary here. There also is a couple trails I'd like to speak to about that we're proposing. One is a continuation of a trail. This is a power line easement trail that goes all the way up here. And along our western boundary, we're proposing, there's a proposed trail on the city's plan, and we're proposing to come in conjunction with our site, work with the city to get a BLM grant for this area to grade out the trail 30 feet in width for a future trail, and then do our drainage improvements on the other side of it, therefore giving the city an amenity to basically help facilitate the construction of this trail that we believe is going to really be beneficial for the entire community in this area. We've worked with Public Works. Public Works has issued 4 or 5 additional comments or conditions on the site in regards to the trail. I believe you've been provided with those. We would agree to all of those conditions. No? Oh, you have it. Oh, Lucian still has them, I'm sorry. Okay, but he'll provide them to you. We are in agreement with all of those conditions, if you want to pass them out. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys would have. I do have one clarification comment on condition 17 on the SDR, and it's a Public Works condition, so I'll wait till Lucian's available again. On condition 17 on the SDR, it states towards the bottom that the above thresholds, notwithstanding all requirements, shall be constructed within 24 months of approval of all construction drawings. Before that, there's a bunch of text. We wanted to make sure the interpretation of that wasn't that within 24 months we had to build all of the improvements for the entire property. This is really large, and it's going to take us multiple years to build, probably a lot longer than 24 months.
All right, through you, Mr. Chairman, I can kind of answer that one. 24 months is essentially the agreement time when a developer comes in and bonds for improvements. The agreement lasts for 24 months, but it can always be extended. And so know that there isn't an expectation that everything will be built in 24 months. I can say that on the record. There's not an expectation that it will be built in 24 months, but, we'll hold on to the bond until all the work is completed.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. That's all we have at this time. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. We'll now open this matter up for public hearing. If you wish to comment, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Yes, thank you, Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. I appreciate the applicant's cooperation with the trails. My problem that I'd like to address is number 22. And I can tell you from experience that poor Councilman Reese, he fought for 14 years that I know of because they didn't put in sidewalks in my neighborhood when those houses were built. And that came back to haunt them. And whereas it sounds great now, you have to look ahead 15, 20, 30 years, and in my case, 60 years, and you're going to have some real problems coming down the road. So I'm saying right now, we need the sidewalks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners. And if I may, I'll take the liberty and go first. I'm looking at the pump house that you have for this. My understanding is you don't get water unless you have that pump house. Is that a correct statement? Now, my understanding is that the homeowners association is going to be responsible for maintaining the pump house?
I'm sorry, Brad Bowe with the applicant. No, the water district will accept the pump house when it's complete, and they will own and maintain it.
Okay, because...
But we will maintain the open space around it as
All right.
part of the neighborhood.
Because in some of the materials that I'd reviewed, it was my understanding that the pump house was going to be owned and operated by the homeowners association, so that's not true then?
No, it's not. I think the reason for that thought might be the fact that we have agreed that the trail system, until such time as it's completely built out by the city, the homeowners association will maintain that area for dust and vandalism and things like that. And at a point in the future when the city can fund the rest of the trail improvements over and above the grading and drainage improvements that we propose to provide for the city, at that point in time it would switch from the homeowners association over to the maintenance department for the city.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Brad. Any other members of the commission wish to be heard on this? Commissioner Bonar?
Yeah, I read somewhere where there's an extra long street without a cul-de-sac at the end. Can you comment on that? And do you also have a cross-section of your, is it a 40 or 47-foot right-of-way that you can display?
I'll speak to that. First of all, I believe it's the overlength cul-de-sac, which the city is saying, or in the staff report mentions, it's this section right here that's really long. And the way that we've developed this site is so that we could develop this area at one elevation and then scarp all of this down and terrace it down approximately 30 feet from here to here to accommodate the 80 foot of elevation difference. So the street pattern was kind of necessary. What necessitated it was the grading concept. We do have a fire access at the end of this for emergencies. We talked to the fire department about it. We don't believe that it's going to be a major hindrance. This is a gated subdivision up here, and only these residents have access to this. The section of the street, I do not have a cross-section with me, but it's 40 feet from back of curb to back of curb with roll curb on both sides.
The need for the 6-foot retaining walls. The need for the 6 feet retaining walls and the need for the extra long road is because you don't want to go down a steep connector road to tie in these developments. What it says backwards to me is that you're developing in too steep a ground. And I don't know what's further west than this. Is it untouchable as further development, or is it pristine, will stay that way forever? But frankly, I think you're developing on ground that's too steep to be developed. I'll pause for now.
Excuse me.
Commissioner Quinn?
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about item number 22. Could you show me on the screen that I have, which is that nice green projected thing, could you show me the streets of Lone Mountain and Pooley Road that are not going to have the sidewalks? Could you just point at it for me? Because I got this
Sure.
big screen, and I'd like to see where they are in conjunction with the neighborhood.
Sure. Pooley is the alignment here. That's going to be a trail the entire way. It's not proposed to ever be a street on our
Okay.
plan. At
So-
Lone, oh, go ahead.
So there'll be a fence there.
We'll have a CMU wall here, and then we have multiple openings for pedestrians to access into this area here, and some of these also double as drainage easements. There's another trail that interconnects with this future trail that's planned along Pooley.
And then the other place where there won't be a sidewalk?
Internally is where we're not putting sidewalks. On all the public streets, there would be sidewalks. So Lone Mountain would have a sidewalk. We would have a sidewalk on Peaceful Dawn. We would have a sidewalk on Stange. We would have a sidewalk on Kersey. All of those would be public streets with sidewalks.
So in this entire neighborhood, in front of everybody's house, there will not be a sidewalk. Is that correct to say?
That is correct. That's very similar to all of these subdivisions that have been built out in this entire Lone Mountain area.
So have you thought about a big rain or a big storm or like gushing waters or all this stuff that's going to be running into people's yards without these sidewalks?
We're doing a drainage study right now, and all of the water should be contained within the curb in the 100-year storm event.
Well, I'm just going to tell you now, I will not support number 22. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Truesdale?
When you ask for this, you're talking about this variance for the retaining wall. You're talking about a 6-foot retaining wall. And then you're going to, on top of that 6-foot retaining wall, put another 6-foot rear yard wall, right? In some of these lots?
No.
Like between the two lots to the west and then the smaller lots, these where you're talking about scarifing and then cutting down?
Well, let me explain a little bit more about what our plans are out here. We see this as, these are the largest lots, and they will be the largest homes that have been built in the Lone Mountain area. We see this as an upscale area, that we tried to embrace the slope, that the 8%, the 80 feet, and say, well, what can we do with this to make this neighborhood more appealing? Because going to another person's question, everything west of here is BLM. This is the growth boundary right here, for lack of a better term. And so we see the opportunity to have the lot run off and then drop without putting a wall on it and leaving the view open both to the valley and to the west you can see into the mountains. The idea here is that when you are trying to pick up 80 feet, there are times when, recognize that to pick up a foot, you give up 2 feet of width. That to go from 3.5, all we would end up with is one wall upon another wall upon another wall, and then we would meet the guidelines, shrink the lots, which is not what the homeowners want and isn't going to look as good, where if we can, in select locations, put the 6-foot wall so that we can offer a deeper lot, a better scene, and then landscape it. We don't like the idea of a 6-foot wall, 6-foot retainer with a 6-foot block wall above. Think of it more standing on the lot, it's dropping off in front of you, but when you get to the bottom of that, what you're looking down on is to increase the size of that person's lot, the retainer would push into that slope.
Right. But what I'm getting at is, there are some areas where you're asking for this 6-foot retaining wall, and there will be another wall above it. I mean, in Lone Mountain West, I've been in people's yards, I've been in a lot of these homes along this slope, and you can climb up on the upper person's wall, like most kids would do to play and get into trouble or whatever. It could be 15, 20 feet down to where it stops. That's a large drop between residences. And I'm not saying there's other other municipalities in this valley have done things better when they've dealt with their hillsides, but if you look in parts of Henderson where the homes of Seven Hills have kind of climbed up the hill and dealt with the slope incredibly well with not a lot of the same issues that we get in this area, and this property's been before us 3 or 4 different times with different plans, but every time it's this linear bunch of boxes that require these variances for these large, 80 feet's a hell of a drop. I mean, don't get me wrong. But it seems to me there's a lot of design solutions that have happened, not only in the valley here, but in other communities, that actually embrace these slopes and create a better quality of community without just monstrous retaining walls. And I'd love to see us approve getting rid of all the easements, agree to the density, and have you solve your design problems with those hurdles out of the way. Because I believe you're going to make some nice homes up on one level, then it's going to be a huge step down. I've been out in the homes out here. The sidewalks aren't as critical an issue as just the amount of cinder block we build out there. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I just can't support the potential of having walls that high. I think it's, you got one neighbor that's up on the hill and one neighbor that's stuck in a basement, in a valley behind there with no sunlight, the way this is laid out. And I know there's some great engineers and you guys have some great people on staff. There's got to be a better solution than just that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to be heard? I just have a couple comments myself. I have to agree with both Commissioners Truesdale and Quinn. I'm not comfortable with these large walls where it could become an attractive nuisance, and I'm really not comfortable with the lack of sidewalks in here. Originally, I kind of looked at this and I felt that you did have, the rest of the development around there, the internal streets did have the no sidewalks going on, but it doesn't appear that you're really connected with the rest of that, because most of your access is, the way I'm seeing it, you're coming in with sidewalk streets to access your development, and I'm just not comfortable. I mean, you should probably at least have sidewalks at least on one side of the street. I know it's going to probably cost you some lots, but right now I can't support this the way it's configured. Anybody else wish to be heard? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, regarding item 19, MOD 47606, move to follow staff's recommendation for approval.
Please vote. Motion, please post. Motion carries.
Item 20, ZON 47605, move to follow staff's recommendation for approval.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries.
Item 21, VAR 47607, the motion is to follow staff's recommendation for denial.
Please vote, and please note that the motion is for denial. Please post. Motion carries.
Item 22, VAR 47609, motion is to follow staff's recommendation for denial.
Please vote, and again, please note that the motion is for denial. Please post. Motion carries.
Item 23, VAC 47611. The motion is for approval, subject to all conditions.
Excuse me, is that 23?
That's item 23.
Please vote. Note that this is for approval. Please post. Motion carries.
Finally, item 24, SDR 47610. Motion is to follow staff's recommendation for denial.
Please vote, and please note that this is for denial. Please post. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, please note that these items will all go forward to the March 20th City Council meeting.
Moving on now to item number 25, which is VAR 47819, applicant owner NP Palace LLC, for possible action on a request for a variance to allow a 50-foot tall flagpole on the roof of an existing building where the maximum height of the pole allowed is 40 feet on 10 acres at 2411 West Sahara Avenue, Ward 1, Councilwoman Tarkanian. Staff is recommending denial. Staff, may we have a report, please?
Excuse me, I'm going to have to abstain from this item as my son works directly for one of the principals. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the existing hotel tower already exceeds the allowable height limitations imposed by the North Las Vegas Airport Overlay District. The addition of the flagpole on top of the tower will further increase the height and may have an impact on navigable airspace. As there's no apparent hardship requiring the taller flagpole, staff recommends denial. There were no approvals, and there were 2 protests received after publication. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we hear from the applicant, please? And please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Terry Murphy, 516 South 6th Street, representing Palace Station. And with me is Keith Koshin with Yesco, and his address is?
5119 South Cameron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For many years, we had a flagpole on top of the 217-foot tower for Palace Station. At some point in the last 12 months, it was damaged by a storm and had to be taken down. And so since its initial installation, the city code has changed such that a flagpole must be only 40 feet from the ground and no higher, and so, or from its base and no higher. And so we, in order to have it at 50 feet, we needed to apply for a variance. This is not essential to our business, but our neighbors and especially some of the veterans in the area have asked us, hey, what's up with the flag? Why'd you take our American flag down? And so we're here to seek your permission to put that back up. And if there are any issues with the Federal Aviation Administration, we will certainly first contact them and get their permission as well if that's a requirement. And Keith is here to answer any questions you may have on the specifics of the flagpole.
Thank you. We'll now open this matter for public comment. Does anybody wish to be heard? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners.
Just a quick question. You said it was originally 40 feet, now you want to go 50, and I think your backup said because at 40 you can't see it from the freeway?
Originally, the original flagpole was actually at 45 feet, the original flagpole that was on top of that tower.
So it was...
So why not go back to what?
It was less
originally-
visible than we would have liked it to be.
Okay, so that's
So we're adding another 5 feet.
that's
to
a
what the
self-imposed
original-
hardship then?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, question for staff through you. In the past, when there have been safety concerns regarding aviation, there is some entity, I can't tell you what it is. I don't know if it's the FAA, but we have had supporting documentation stating whether or not this is a violation of airspace, whether they're comfortable with it. Do we have anything like this, or should we?
I'll go ahead and address that through you, Mr. Chair. We have obviously our airport contour map, which gives us essentially the height limitations within a specific area relative to the airport. For any structure in those areas, they do have to go through the FAA and through Clark County for approval. However, in our code, we don't actually require them to do that first before they make application for an entitlement with the City of Las Vegas. Where we saw this most common was when we had all the high-rises between 2003 and 2008, where they would come first to the Planning Commission and City Council, and then afterwards would go to the FAA. And that did cause some consternation on the part of our Planning Commission and City Council members. However, the process is that they obtain their entitlements first and then are required to go through the FAA. So this would be the same. If this is approved by Planning Commission or City Council, they would then have to go to the FAA.
And just in follow-up through you, Mr. Chair, there is a safety concern about the height of that pole that I heard in the staff report.
Correct, based on the contours that we have from the airport.
Mr. Chairman, for staff, this is significantly below the stratosphere, which is in the same environ. If somebody's low enough to, and I think Mr. Flangus could probably speak to this better than I can, there's other buildings just south of here along the strip, whether you're going east or west, that are at this height. I usually think flags should be at whatever height we do, but this is on top of a building, and I gotta believe it's a lot more attractive to me than some of the other things we're going to be voting on this evening. So I can support this. I think it actually fits the character and the period of the building, and it fits our national pride.
I agree with Commissioner Truesdale. I could support this as well, also being a veteran. Does anybody else have any comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair. If this was in a residential neighborhood at 50 feet from ground level, it'd be a different story, keeping people up. But the difference of being 40 feet, 50 feet when you're a couple hundred feet in the air, I say we approve it, and if FAA says that you can't go 50 feet, you can only go 40 feet, well, then so be it. You bring it back down to 40.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner?
Just one more chime to support. I'm not so sure it's not essential to the business. I kind of take it in a different sense. As for the FAA, I have processed a number of applications through there, and if you think of it this way, the FAA is really the final word, because I don't think the County Airport Authority has ever turned anything down that came back approved from the FAA. So I'm going to support the application.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move to follow staff's recommendation as if approved for approval.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries, noting the abstention of Commissioner Quinn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. On behalf of the owners, I want to thank you, because veterans and especially wounded warriors are something that they take great pride in supporting and helping out. And so this meant more to them in their hearts than it did for the support of the business. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Chair, this item will go forward to the March 20th City Council.
Thank you.
Moving on to items 26 and 27, which are related. We'll begin with item 26. VAR 47821, applicant owner 900 Fremont LLC, for possible action on a request for a variance to allow a 6-foot tall fence in the front yard where a maximum height of 5 feet is allowed on 2.75 acres at 902 and 916 Fremont Street in Ward 3, Councilman Coffin. Staff is recommending denial. Item 27, which is SDR 47823, for possible action on a request for a site development plan review for a temporary parking lot and waiver of the downtown Centennial Plan parking lot screening fence design standards. Staff is recommending denial. Staff, may we have a report, please?
Mr. Chair, I'm currently under contract with the applicant, and I'll be abstaining on this matter.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is proposing to construct a temporary surface parking lot comprised of 373 spaces, of which 8 spaces along the north perimeter are designated to be handicap accessible. The lot is intended to remain for no more than 3 years in conformance with the requirements of the Downtown Centennial Plan for a temporary lot. The Downtown Centennial Plan screening standards are to be met by the installation of a wrought iron fence. However, the fence does not meet the design standards of the plan and exceeds the maximum height allowed. As a result, both a variance and a waiver are required for the proposed fence. Staff is recommending denial of both applications as the applicant has provided no evidence of a unique or extraordinary circumstance to justify the request, and the proposed fence will not be compatible with the standard fence required throughout the downtown area. Please note that there are additional letters of protest since publication.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from the applicant, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Todd Kessler, 300 North Las Vegas Boulevard, Las Vegas 89101, on behalf of the applicant, 900 Fremont LLC. We're here today to talk about something unique in downtown that we haven't really done much in a while, which is parking. We come here often talking about the lack of parking, and this is a solution that's being offered up through the downtown project for some of the other projects that are occurring down along Fremont. This is a temporary parking lot pursuant to the new temporary parking standards that have been adopted in downtown, and it'll be the first of its kind. I don't know if anyone's been approved yet under this standard. Maybe somebody has, but just one. It took a while. It is, again, a temporary facility, and we see this as a tremendous draw for the other ancillary uses that we're creating. As you know, there is no parking standards in downtown Las Vegas. We come often with projects without any parking. This will help alleviate those problems. Now, while this parking lot is not dedicated to those specific projects, it will help alleviate the problem. We also see this space in a little different way, and that's probably how we got here today as it relates to the variance, because we wouldn't need anything if we chose to put in a 42-inch fence, which is the pursuant requirement for the ordinance that's been adopted. We see this space a little bit more flexible. We have the ability to have some special events and do some other things that would allow this parking lot to serve many purposes. And so those are one of the design reasons that we chose the fence site as we did. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. We'll now open it up for public comment. Anybody wishing to be heard, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. First of all, I think the wrought iron fence looks nice. I don't know who in the world is going to put up that kind of money for it, though, but it sure looks a lot better than that cyclone fence around there. But I'm all for this. I think it looks great.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to be heard? Seeing none, I'll open it up for comment amongst the commission. Commissioner Truesdale?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I understand the temporary nature of this, and the applicant's right. If you put a 42-inch fence up, you probably don't have to get some of the things you're requesting here, but it's an open fence. Somebody can jump over a 6-foot fence and jump over a 42-inch fence. Why does the height of the fence make your, quote, flexible uses more attractive?
Well, I would disagree with the 42-inch versus the 60-inch. You can get over an 8-foot fence if you want. But I think that 42 inches is more of a hop than a climb. So I mean, that's my own belief on that statement. But the other thing is, that I'm saying is when we use this place as a private event, or a special event, I should say, for some function, whether it's the Life is Beautiful Festival that's occurring in downtown, or whether it's another kind of event that we're planning to have, it allows for that to not occur, for a quick hop to not occur, and it allows for ability to contain itself. And
But
to
if
be
we
more
design everything downtown,
Say it.
if we design everything downtown and we provide all the waivers for that special event or that monthly carnival, or, when the circus comes to town, all of these things, where's the land for all these people that are wanting to live here? At what point do we say there is no dwelling units out downtown, new dwelling units yet? No one has advanced a project to build them, but yet we're planning for more temporary events. It doesn't seem like we're trying to make a long-term commitment to downtown, and I believe you and your partners are making a long-term commitment, but everything starts off by it's a temporary use. It's a temporary use. I've been involved in downtown for 30 years, and any day now we're going to have something happen. And there's buildings being sold, there's office users, there's the only new residential downtown other than the two towers, which, as I talked to some people yesterday, are full, or waiting list. So I don't understand why all the temporary, what we're all waiting for.
I mean, I think this parking situation is specific to the ordinance that was drafted for temporary parking standards. I mean, the city council recognized the need for some things to change, or else some of these vacant lots wouldn't be turned into anything, and we needed parking downtown, hence this ordinance. So I think that the whole aspect of what we're going for here is because we were given this opportunity through council and through this ordinance to have temporary parking. And the development standards of a parking lot on a non-temporary basis, I should say, is somewhat astronomical for a short-term project.
But you're going to pave 3 acres of land, roughly 3 acres, 120,000 feet. Asphalt, no trees, no landscape setback, and we're going to put a wrought iron fence around it. It's going to be the monster heat island, except for that one night a week, there's a special event, or 2 nights a week, or 2 nights. What does that do to all the properties around it? How does that benefit, other than us waiving the standards on a parking? What encourages the guy next door to start reinvesting in his parcel and create something?
I think I think if you wait and see for the next 2 years, there's a lot of reinvestment. I don't think this is going to be a hurdle to anybody reinvesting.
Well,
we're part of that. We're the leader of that part.
We're chipping away at an area that's roughly 4 to 6 square blocks that has 101 different things coming. It's got everything temporary, but yet we're taking all the buildings down, and there's really no cohesive plan of what goes forward.
Yeah, I mean, if you show the image of what this looks like right now, it's been fenced up for years. It's got elevation changes. It's not very attractive.
It's an old foundation. It's been torn down.
Yeah, so we're coming in with complying with the new ordinance of temporary, less than 3 years. It's meant to be a temporary parking lot, and that's what it's.
And in 3 years, if nothing is going, it'll be a paved lot, just like the B of A lot was.
I think you'll have an opportunity to be heard on that at that time. I wish I could predict the future. I'm telling you, we're moving rapidly. We all want vertical construction. We all want more residential units downtown, and it's a process. And this is to satisfy needs that are on the books right now, various retail opportunities that will be affected in some form or fashion. So, that's personally my opinion on that.
We did this around a lot of area around the Justice Center, and wound up with just fenced lots with temporary use and dirt, and
I think you have to look at who's behind it. I think you have to look at the exact location, and I don't think the same things will occur. I don't want to sit up here and argue what occurred with those situations. I don't think you've seen a developer as active as us in downtown. I don't think this 10th and Fremont is the same area as the Justice Center, or 9th and Fremont, given the other stuff that's occurring on 7th and Fremont, 8th and Fremont.
if we approve this fence, I have a feeling we will see this lot in 3 years. And it just, we've been downtown with everything being tore down and nothing being even renovated for so long, except a few buildings. I'm going to give you guys that. But why go for a 6-foot fence when 42 inches would meet the standard?
I've got better, higher, and better uses for this site. I don't know what they are yet. I know that they're coming.
Oh, I suspect you do. I understand that.
Yeah, and so.
But I mean, it's like the guy that stands before it and says, if you don't approve my apartment project, I'm going to leave it like it is. If we don't approve of temporary parking, we're going to get this here. I'd like to see that there's a greater plan that's going forward, and everybody says, we're committed to this, and we're building things, and we're going vertical as fast as possible. If we just do temporary lots downtown, we will have a temporary downtown. And I know that's not what you want, but that's what the message starts to carry through. All I see is what's before us is 120,000 feet of asphalt and a variance for a wrought iron fence. That doesn't send the greatest message.
I see it differently. I mean, that's all I can say. I think
You don't see asphalt and you don't see a 6-foot fence?
Of course I see asphalt, but I see, I already think I indicated what I see from it.
Okay.
And the benefits that it does provide. And again, the city council took a position to allow temporary lots, so I'm willing to.
If you met all the standards of a temporary lot, we wouldn't be hearing this today. But no matter what
Simply a fence height. It's simply a fence height.
But what I'm getting at is, with everything the city did for the temporary lots, which is to help this type of development get forward, we still have self-imposed variances.
You'd still have the asphalt with a 42-inch fence.
May I please ask Mr. Kessler a question?
Certainly, Commissioner Quinn.
Thank you. Mr. Kessler, let's say we go forward and you build your parking lot here. How many total spaces are there?
372, I believe.
And then of the 372, how many are van accessible for the disabled of the 372?
I would ask staff, they have the site plan more countable, but I believe more than 10, I don't know.
Is it up to code, staff?
Commissioner Quinn.
Is there 8 or
through
10 or
Chair.
something?
There are 8 handicap parking spaces. It looks like there are 2 that can be considered van accessible. However, slight movement of those extra width aisles could add up to 2 additional van accessible very easily.
And then, Mr. Gebgeki, does this variance require a building permit from Mr. Kessler?
Yes, it does.
Is that in place?
No, all walls and fences do require a building permit, and
But
that
those
can't
come
be
after
issued
we
until
approve it?
after the variance is
Okay.
approved.
Just want to make sure they're going to be there. Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner Bonar?
Yeah, kind of a design economic question. The price of the 8-foot wrought iron that you're proposing, how does that compare with, let's call it an 8-foot downtown standard design fence?
You know, I haven't priced.
And what are you going to do with the 8-foot wrought iron fence whenever ripe happens?
I don't recall, years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I priced the difference between the DCP fence, which is a lot more ornate, a lot thicker, compared to, let's call it a stock fence, and I recall it being approximately 50%. Again, I'm not here today to talk about this fence and today's numbers, so. And then, as it relates to, at the end of the project, I mean, we believe in recycling. I mean, I don't know how it specifically would be recycled, but it would be recycled in some form or fashion.
Have you even tried to take the standard downtown 42-foot, 42-inch, and expand it to a 6-foot height to see what it?
It is available in 72. I've seen it
available.
recently around the courthouse, and again, it's quite costly per lineal foot. It's very different.
Not if you're going to reuse it as you would with the wrought iron. If you're going to reuse either. Well, you see the track I'm taking. Thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, through you,
Oh, go ahead.
just for clarification, the request is for a 6-foot wrought iron fence, not 8 feet.
Anybody else wish to be heard? Commissioner Goins?
Just a quick question. Didn't we just recently put a new parking meters in the downtown area?
Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, no, not yet. There is a contract under consideration by City Council to put in new parking meters, but they have not approved it yet.
So, Mr. Kessler, this will be open to anybody to come park in,
Correct.
correct?
It'll be paid smart meters, which is similar, like El Cortez has a lot in downtown that has it. You have an identified stall. And
So
then
they'll
you-
be paid?
Yes, paid.
Is it like $1 an hour?
And then, but also some of the businesses that we sponsor will have validation programs as well. But normally, yes, a normal person who's not getting validated at one of the sponsoring businesses would simply self-pay in a mini station that's built into the ground.
And I'm kind of the same cloth as Commissioner Truesdale. As you know, I tell you all the time, I ride by here every day because I have to take my son to school, and I scratch my head and I go, is it a hope and a prayer we're going here with? All this development down here, a lot of it is temporary. Is it going to be built out? I almost was wondering about the container park until I saw now dirt starting to move there. The containers are going and things. So I breathed a sigh of relief, because as long as I've been on the commission, you can kind of go back and look 5, 10, 15 years and say, why did I vote for that back then? That type of thing. So, we don't know. But the vehicle is there for you to put in the temporary fence. I wish you could do it all within the parameter that's there, but again, you're here asking and you're following the proper protocol. I guess to Commissioner Truesdale, I guess we'll have to wait for 3 years to see, but if it's any kind of solace, I told Mr. Kessler I was impressed that ever since I've known him, about 3 or 4 days a week, he gets his parking lot around his building sprayed, and he's been so consistent that I almost stop and marvel 3 days a week that parking lot's getting sprayed, and it was sprayed again yesterday, and it's got to be...
Let me say this too, this parking lot will be 24 hours secured by
it's gotta be
individuals too, so I mean, it's...
cleanest lot downtown.
And very clean, and everything that we do is professionally managed and put together.
Thank you.
So with that-
I'll go ahead and entertain a motion, please.
One quick question before. You're going to have 24-hour security for the applicant. Is there lighting on this lot, or is it?
Yes, there's, the site plan indicates some lighting fixtures within it.
Apparently, it's not in my backup. But if it's going to be lit and safe.
Yeah, I mean, our number one goal downtown, as we've discussed on other projects, is security. So, I mean, we know what the public's concerns are, and the best way to address that is with the proper security and lighting.
Thank you. We'll now entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, on item 26, I'll move for approval subject to all staff's recommendations and conditions.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries, noting the abstention of Commissioner Schlottman.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, item 27, move for approval subject to all staff's recommendations and conditions.
Please vote.
Hope this doesn't end like the old Quinn quote, nothing more permanent than a temporary parking lot.
Please
we're
post.
working on vertical construction. It's just, it takes a long time.
Motion carries, noting the abstention of Commissioner Schlottman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, these items are final action in the absence of an appeal within 10 days.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 34, which is SUP 47837. Applicant James A. Lee, owner Mercar Corporation, for possible action on a request for a special use permit for a proposed mortuary or funeral home use at 21 Marion Drive, Ward 3, Councilman Kaufman's ward. Staff is recommending approval. Staff, may we have a report, please?
Mr. Chair, the proposed funeral chapel would be located within an existing commercial development within a standalone building. The use is appropriate for the C1 district and could be conducted in a manner that is compatible with the surrounding uses. Staff therefore recommends approval. There were no approvals and 6 protests received after publication.
Jim Lee, 4904 Wiltondale Way, Las Vegas.
Thank you.
We thank you for your consideration here this evening. We've been striving to open a second funeral home here in town. I have one in Henderson and also operate a funeral home over in Pahrump. The funeral home is planned to be strictly that. It's not there will be no cremations or anything performed at this particular site. It's not a crematory. We do have crematories located at our Henderson facility and in our Pahrump facility. So all cremations would be done in one or the other facility.
Thank you, sir. Now open this matter for public comment. Does anybody wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion and open it up to discussion amongst the commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I reviewed this. It's predominantly a commercial zone. And reading my backup, I didn't see any of the protest. So this is the first I've heard of this. So in seeing that, I don't have any issues with this. If nobody else has any comments, I'd be willing to make a motion.
Thank you. Please do.
Chairman, on item number 34, SUP 47837, I would make a motion to follow staff's recommendations for approval.
Please vote. Please post. Motion carries. Director?
Mr. Chair, this item is final action in the absence of an appeal within 10 days.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Director's business, we'll begin with item number 36, abeyance TXT 47630. Applicant, owner, City of Las Vegas, for discussion and possible action to amend Title 19 to establish standards for super graphic signage. Staff has no recommendation. Staff, may we have a report, please?
Mr. Chair and members of the Commission, at our presentation last month, Planning Commission requested that I provide some additional information, and then also in the interim, I did receive some additional questions from the Planning Commission members. What I'd like to do is do an expanded presentation this evening to address some of the questions that you had, to go thoroughly through the proposed standards associated with super graphic signage, and then to provide some illustrations to help illustrate some of the concepts behind the proposed ordinance. Let me start first with, again, some of the basic standards that we have relative to the super graphic signage. And let's see. Actually, yeah, if you could go back. Let's see. Let me just, actually, is there another slide, Mr. Swanton? Okay, there we are. Thank you. Let me start with the minimum requirements. First of all, as I had presented last month, these are the threshold requirements, if you will, in order to qualify for super graphic signage. First of all, a building tower must have a minimum of 9 stories in height and 120,000 square feet in area. It's limited to buildings with commercial uses only, and so that means that mixed-use buildings or residential buildings would not qualify for super graphic signage. And then finally, the building must be occupied. We cannot have supergraphic signage on any buildings that are currently vacant or under construction. Any building that might be under construction would have to go through a temporary special event sign permit in order to do that. But for the supergraphic signage, again, the building must be occupied. In terms of the area where this would be permitted, it is limited specifically to the downtown Centennial Plan boundaries, so only within the downtown area. Next slide, please. Let me go into the issue about off-premise messages. Based on our discussions at the stakeholder group, the proposed ordinance that you have in front of you this evening does not permit off-premise messages. There is also language relative to what would be permitted for on-premise messages. It's a little bit more strict than what would be permitted elsewhere within the city of Las Vegas. This is something that a number of you had questions on, and so let me illustrate what it means when we say that it is limited to messages that advertise principal business operations or attractions. Under that definition, this is how we would interpret that. For a casino hotel, this is probably the best example to use, they would be able to advertise their hotel operations, the individual shops within the hotel, any shows that they may have there on the property, specific restaurants that are located there on the property, and amenities such as their spa facilities or any other type of attraction that they might have. However, they would not be able to advertise individual products or services or any type of off-premise message. One of the discussions that we had in our stakeholder groups is, should they be allowed to advertise, for example, alcohol that they sell in the shop? Based on this definition of on-premise message, the answer to that would be no. Again, they would be restricted to the principal business operations or attractions there on the property. And so hopefully that might provide you a little bit additional definition as to what would be permitted under the on-premise message restrictions. Next slide, please. Relative to the number of signs that would be permitted, in the ordinance we have a limitation of 3 supergraphic signs per building tower and no more than 1 supergraphic sign per tower elevation. In terms of the sign area, the minimum size for a supergraphic sign is 1,500 square feet. We do not limit the maximum size of a supergraphic sign. However, as we are looking at the approval process for supergraphic signs, the sign does need to be consistent with the architecture of the building. So there should be some natural limitations in place based on the configuration of the building. In terms of the maximum height that would be permitted, the supergraphic signage cannot extend above the parapet or the roof line of the building and must be a minimum of 15 feet above the grade of the sidewalk. I do have an illustration that helps to illustrate that concept later on in my presentation. And then projection maximum of 5 feet from the building face. Moving on to orientation of signs. For those properties that are located within the boundaries of the scenic byway overlay, supergraphic signs cannot face or be parallel to Las Vegas Boulevard. In terms of the boundaries of the scenic byway overlay, that is only the properties that have direct frontage on Las Vegas Boulevard. One of the questions that I had was, would the El Cortez Tower, for example, be able to have a supergraphic sign on the west face of the tower? The answer is yes, it would be, because it's located 1 block away from Las Vegas Boulevard and is not within the boundaries of the scenic byway overlay. In addition, the signs cannot be oriented towards any single-family zoned or multifamily zoned properties. And again, that was a protection put in place to protect those residential properties. Illumination, external lighting would be permitted, but it must be shielded from the rights-of-way and other properties. In our stakeholder group, we did discuss the use of LED illuminated signage for supergraphic signs. What the group decided was that it should be limited to static images, so no moving images, and 6-second cycles were the minimum time that the image must be displayed in order to prevent any type of strobing or flashing of those messages. One of the things that was requested by Planning Commission last month was should there be any limit on the illumination of the LED signage. In doing some research, what we would propose to you that if you want to put a limitation on the LED signs, that we use a standard of 300 nits of brightness. And since I had never heard of the term nit before, I had to have one of my staff members explain it to me, and let me just give you a little background on that. A nit is defined as a candela per square meter, or is a unit of measurement of luminance, or the brightness of the sign. And so it is a measurement for how bright the sign is. We looked at a number of different standards, anything ranging from 250 nits during the day to 250 nits at night to 1,000 during the day. Looking at one of the contracts that the City Council just approved, we felt that 300 nits would probably be the standard that we would recommend. So if you want to place a limitation on the illumination of LED signage, our recommendation to you would be that we include language at 300 nits. In terms of maintenance, that has been another concern that was discussed both in the stakeholder group and from the questions that I had received from members of the Planning Commission. The language that you have in the ordinance is that any signs that are damaged or faded must be removed, repaired, or replaced within 30 days. And then any immediate safety issues would need to be corrected within 72 hours. One of the comments that I had was, should we put language in requiring the sign holders to bond for any maintenance that's required? In doing my initial research, we as the planning department don't have the ability to accept bonds. That's something that the land development section does, typically for public infrastructure improvements. I haven't been able to come up with any language relative to bonding for any maintenance that would be required. If that's the recommendation of the Planning Commission, we can investigate that further as this goes forward to City Council. Moving on to the approval process, that's another part that there were several questions about that. Currently, for a master sign plan in the City of Las Vegas, Planning Commission has final action. However, the recommendation of the stakeholder group was that the master sign plans for super graphic signs go first to Planning Commission and then to City Council for final approval. And so it would become a two-step process. Also, as part of the approval process standards, it does state that no variances or deviations from the threshold requirements would be permitted. Another item that was included by the stakeholder group was relative to required reviews. They would be allowed under the ordinance. The review period would not be less than 3 years. In terms of the process for the approval and notification associated with that process, as I had mentioned, this is a two-step process. First, the master sign plan application goes to the Planning Commission. As part of that, we would notify property owners within 1,000 feet of the property requesting the master sign plan application. So that's standard as for all other notification that we do for our land use entitlements. After the Planning Commission action, it would then be forwarded to City Council, and in a similar fashion to Planning Commission, we would again notify property owners with 1,000 feet. This is, again, our standard process for notification for land use entitlements. Let me provide a couple of illustrations that speak to the requirements of the ordinance itself. First of all, the question about orientation of signs that are located within the scenic byway overlay. I'm just using the Stratosphere Hotel as an example because it has a couple of different faces on the building that helps to illustrate this. In the image that you have there on the left, you'll notice that there's a super graphic sign for Insanity the Ride, which is one of the rides that they have on top of the tower. It is located on the south face or south-facing elevation of the building. And because that sign is not parallel to Las Vegas Boulevard, even though it's in the scenic byway, that particular sign would be allowed. If you look at the example on the right, you'll notice that there's a super graphic sign for Top of the World Restaurant. Because that particular elevation is parallel to Las Vegas Boulevard, that particular super graphic sign would not be allowed. And so hopefully that illustrates how we would address super graphic signage within the boundaries of the scenic byway overlay. And again, this is only for properties that directly front on Las Vegas Boulevard. In the next example, this helps to illustrate the height and placement of super graphic signs. We have language in the proposed ordinance that supergraphic signs cannot be any lower than 15 feet above the grade of the sidewalk. One of the reasons why we have that in there is that we do encourage active ground floor uses within the downtown area. We don't want the supergraphic signage to cover up those uses. And so in the example that you have on the left, this is what would be appropriate. It's integrated with the architecture of the building, located just above the first cornice line on the building there, and within the wall structure of the building. The second example, the one that you have there on the right, would not be permitted because the supergraphic signage extends down to the base of the building, so that would not be permitted. In our next example, relative to the number of signs that would be permitted, the example that you have there on the left, you'll notice here we're using the Golden Nugget as the example. They would be permitted one supergraphic sign per elevation. In the example that you have there on the right, it's showing that they have two supergraphic signs. There's a small area in between that breaks up those two signs. The example on the right is the one that would not be permitted because it's two separate signs as opposed to one single sign. And so that's how that requirement would be applied. And then I think this is my final example in terms of the size. Again, the example on the left is the one that would be permitted under the ordinance. The sign is integrated with the architecture of the building and meets the minimum size requirement. In the example on the right, the sign that's shown is too small and it doesn't integrate well with the architecture of the building. It's just kind of stuck up there in the corner. It doesn't mirror any of the fenestration lines or the lines of the windows or any of the structure lines in the building. And so that's something that would not be permitted under that. With that, I think I have addressed most of your concerns. Let me just go over some of the questions. One of the questions I just had a couple of additional things here, if I might add these. One of the questions I had is, what is the enforcement for violation of the on-premises requirement? For example, if someone were to put up an off-premise message, code enforcement would issue a notice to the property owner that the signage is not in conformance with the ordinance. They would be given typically a period of 10 days to make a correction to that sign, and then an additional notice would be served until the actual violation is corrected. And so that's how that would occur. Another question I had was how many buildings in the downtown Centennial Plan area are eligible for supergraphics. I'm not sure if I circulated a list to all of the Planning Commission members. I may not have. I have additional copies here. We actually looked at this as the stakeholder group. There's a total of 31 different towers that would be eligible under the supergraphic sign ordinance. However, there are a couple of them in there. For example, the Regional Justice Center. It is unlikely, based on the language of the supergraphic sign ordinance, that they would want to advertise any of their on-premise services. So there's a number of them that probably would not take advantage of the supergraphic sign ordinance. In terms of the fees that would be charged for supergraphic signage, we would charge the same fees that we charge for any sign, and that's 50 cents a square foot. And so that's the same fee that we charge for any other sign in the city of Las Vegas. And I think that addresses most of the questions that I received from the planning commissioners. Be happy to take any additional questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director. I will now open this up for public comment, please. Anybody wishing to be heard, please come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, Terry Murphy, 516 South 6th Street, representing the D Hotel and Casino. We have had our sign up for some time. We put it up initially as an approved temporary sign. Our initial thought was that we wanted to brand the hotel during our renovations. The sign became popular. We liked it a lot and wanted to keep it, so we started the process of working with the city to figure out a way to do that. We worked on the stakeholders committee with your director, who, by the way, worked miracles with the group. This was one of the more difficult stakeholder processes I've worked on because the issues are not simple and that are before you tonight. The city council passed an ordinance to extend the temporary sign provision, which allowed us to stay up a little bit longer. And now we're here before you tonight We did go to the sign review committee and received their approval on the sign. We do need, their approval is conditioned on complying with the measures that are adopted in some future ordinance, because the belief is that it would be adopted. If it doesn't get adopted, we'll have to revisit it. We believe we're in compliance with all of the provisions of this proposed ordinance, except for the 50 cent per square foot fee, which, this is my own opinion, I think that we should perhaps pay what it costs for the review process, not necessarily a per square foot fee. That's my own personal opinion. With that, first of all, with congratulations to staff for really working hard and bringing a group to consensus, or at least having everybody not kill each other in the room. We support this ordinance as proposed.
Thank you. Sir?
Thank you, Commissioners. Russell Rowe, here on behalf of Boyd Gaming Corporation. As you know, we've been involved in this issue for quite some time. I believe this may be the fourth or fifth iteration of ordinances that began and stopped. We've had concerns all along, really boiling down to the character of downtown, all the work that's been put into getting downtown to where it is today, and the development going on downtown. We're concerned about the aesthetics impact of a super graphic implementation downtown, particularly if it was done with off-premise advertising. And we wanted to make sure there was a fair set of rules that everybody played by, and that any property that qualified would conform to. I got to tell you, the effort that planning staff has put in, and particularly through the leadership of Director Fagg, has been, we wouldn't be where we are today without them. As Ms. Murphy indicated, it's been a very difficult process, and this is very much a compromise of competing interests. But I think we all want to see downtown move forward. So Boyd Gaming is here tonight speaking in support of the ordinance as presented to you, and we're happy to answer any questions. And Mr. Chairman, if I can indulge the commission on two quick items. One, I have two daughters home who are sick, and they're watching, so can I say hello to them quickly?
Please do.
Juliet, Caroline, hi. Hope you girls feel better. Daddy will be home soon. I love you. Oh, and number two, it's Miss Lazovich's birthday tomorrow, so I just wanted to wish her a happy birthday as well.
Thank you.
May I please add one comment? The process, in particular for the D, has been just difficult, as well as the process that the Downtown Third people went through. I believe that this particular ordinance provides a playing field where everybody knows what the rules are. They're the same for everybody, and we all know what to do to get our signs up and be fully compliant with city code. So that's another reason we support it.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard?
Yes, thank you. Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. I'm great with the LED, and I'm great with neon. But I'm wondering, and Dr. Jerbick is not here. I wish he would come out and answer this. What, as to pertains on content, do we have anything to say about the content of the wraps? And if we deny something on that, can they come back and sue us on that? I'm real concerned about that. Thank you.
Mr. Jervik, do you wish to take a shot at that?
I didn't hear the first part of the question. I just, if you denied it under what conditions?
I believe he was asking
Just
if
the
you could deny it
content.
based on
See-
content. Excuse me, Mr. Farlow.
No, we can't.
They can't.
Anybody else wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, we'll open it up to, or we'll close the public portion of this and open it up to comment and discussion with the commission.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Truesdale?
As we've gone through signs over the last 10 years or such, from billboards to the wraps to everything, we would be very remiss if we didn't acknowledge again and again that Director Flynn has taken more grief and been kicked around on this item from every direction, and yet he's brought all these stakeholders together and addressed the concerns, at least I think he's addressed most of the concerns that we can address for this commission, and really done an incredible job. And if it goes well, it's his credit. If it goes badly, remember Flynn's name and his phone number. But I wanted to, every question we've raised, every question I've ever had on this matter, and the 5 different iterations that we've gone through trying to address this, everybody is wound up to this point, I think, in trying to say, how do we do what's best for the property rights of people downtown and for our community image? And there's no perfect solution here, but I can tell you that the questions have been asked, and Flynn's answered them, and the stakeholders have answered them, and I think unless you just don't like signs, this is probably the ultimate solution that could have been brought forward, so I will support it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bonar?
Yeah, I hope I remember the question right now. Jeez, oh man, one of those moments.
You want to come, we'll come back to you?
Come back to me.
Commissioner Moody?
I just also want to congratulate our director. I told Ms. Lazovich today, he should be in blue tights with a red cape and a big gold G on his chest. He could be the super graphic superhero. You really have done great work here, and thank you. This has been a slow process, but I think a lot of people's concerns have been pacified, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moody. Commissioner Slotman?
Yes, Chairman. You know, the 3 main things that stick out to me in this ordinance is the LED illumination, the maintenance requirements, and then the requirement to advertise or announce only principal business operations. And I think those are the 3 items that made me want to support this. And Chairman, through you, Director, before the City Council, if you want to borrow my light meter, I'll show you how to read nits.
Please, I need some lessons.
And back to you, Commissioner Bonar.
Okay, thanks for the patience there. Even with superior maintenance, is there a maximum time that a sign can stay up? I do get tired of the same sign appearing constantly, and I like the little bit of variety. Has that been addressed at all?
There is not a limitation on the amount of time that any individual advertisement may remain up on the building. As you've already stated, it's really the maintenance that dictates when the sign comes down. We have language there relative to being faded or being ripped or things like that. That's the only thing that would require the sign to come down.
Commissioner Goins?
So I guess that first super graphic of the Planning Commission is going to be up there for a while, huh?
Thank you, Commissioner. And Director, tremendous effort in putting this together, and obviously this has been a monumental task. I do, however, have just a couple very minor questions, and one of them has to do about orientation towards residential areas, and the lawyer in me just sees conflict coming on that, because if somebody's against one of these super graphics, somewhere along that line there's going to be a residential area. So is there going to be any type of a limitation on that line? I mean, if a residential area a mile away, what you're going to probably have one on that line that can see it. So I think that just probably might need to be clarified to foreclose upon any future problems.
Let me go ahead and answer that. In terms of the language that we're using in the ordinance itself, we're using the term adjacent, which is already defined in the code, and it essentially means any property that abuts or is directly across the street from where the sign is located. Now, one of the benefits of the boundaries of the downtown Centennial Plan area is that we do have the I-15 freeway and the 95 freeway to the west and to the north, which separates the downtown area from our single-family residential areas. The one area of concern would be the residential areas immediately to the east of the downtown. However, due to the location of the towers, I think it's going to be a sufficient distance away that it shouldn't really impact those areas as well. So I think by virtue of geography that there's certain protections already in place relative to residential neighborhoods.
Thank you, Director. Anybody else have any comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Before you make the motion, let me just clarify one thing. You've given a lot of praise this evening. I think that praise needs to also go to the members of the stakeholder group who participated with us over the course of 3 meetings. As Ms. Murphy indicated, there was bloodshed on a number of occasions in those meetings. But the ordinance that you have before you really came from the group rather than an individual person. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask one point of clarification for purposes of order? Are we, is it still up in the air whether we are adding a condition of the maximum 300 nits of brightness?
If I may respond to that, yes, if you would just include in your ordinance to approve the ordinance as proposed with the limitation on LED signage. We have the language at hand, and so if you would just include that in your motion.
I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Truesdale?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the draft ordinance, including the language requiring the limitation on illumination to the 300 nits, and I think that should cover everything.
Thank you. Please vote. Please post. Motion carries. Director?
And with that, I will breathe a huge sigh of relief. This will go forward to City Council in ordinance form where we'll get to have the same discussions.
Now we can sing happy birthday to Ms. Lazovich.
Okay, moving on to, it's in here. Moving on to item number 37, TXT 47659, applicant owner, City of Las Vegas. Discussion and possible action to amend Title 19.12 regarding mixed-use development to allow non-residential development above the ground floor. Staff is recommending approval. Staff, may we have the report, please?
Chair and members of the commission, we have a cleanup text amendment here before you relative to the development of mixed-use buildings. When we adopted our mixed-use development standards back in 2005, 2006, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did was to encourage commercial uses on the ground floor of those buildings and to provide adequate separation between the commercial uses and the residential uses on the floors above. One of the things that we've discovered over the years as we've reviewed these projects is that there's been a number of projects where they propose to have commercial uses above the ground floor and where they've designed it in such a manner that it does not impact the residential uses. One of those examples would be Tivoli. Another example is the Jewel Lofts that we have downtown where they have live workspaces where it does lend itself to having commercial on the second floor. So for that reason, what we're proposing tonight is to make an amendment to our mixed-use ordinance to allow commercial uses above the ground floor, and we would entertain any questions you might have and would request your support of this amendment.
Thank you, Director. We'll now open this up to public comment. Seeing nobody, we'll go ahead and close the public portion and open it up for discussion amongst the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
with
Truesdale.
regards to the language of above the ground floor, is that anticipated to be contiguous space? More or less, if you've got the ground floor and second floor loft, it'd be commercial, or is it we could wind up with multiple commercial uses sprinkled throughout our mixed-use building?
It's really intended that the commercial uses be discrete from the residential uses. For example, in, let's see, in Jewel, the commercial uses are not accessible from the residential, and so it's really intended that the commercial, again, is connected, that it has, if it's above the first floor, the ground floor, that it has some type of a commercial lobby so that those are grouped together. And so that's really the intent of the change.
Director,
Commissioner Quinn?
what happens if one of these has already been built and they didn't follow suit and they've got the commercial on the ground floor and there's no entry, and my friends that live there are just so mad because they bought as residential, and then when they couldn't sell the bottom floor, slowly commercial creeped in, but the same elevator that I go in to visit my friends are the same elevators that people are going to commercial. Do you know which one I'm talking about? I'll tell you later. But there is one that people are really upset about. So will they be fined, or will you go look at it, or what will happen to those people?
Anytime that we make changes to an ordinance, if there is a development that's impacted by that, it becomes a legally non-conforming development. So we
Okay.
don't make them go back and retrofit unless they're making any significant modifications to the property itself.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner
Yes,
Slotman?
Chairman. Director, has the planning department discussed any of this with the building and safety department? Because sometimes I know that we'll create new ordinances like the live-work overlay district, and it works from a planning standpoint, but then when you get to building and safety, it doesn't necessarily work. And perfect example is years ago when I first moved to town to build the urban lofts, coming in from out in town, we hear about the live-work overlay district, we get our entitlements, and then building and safety says, well, you can't build a live-work building. And so their comment to me was, get rid of the residential and just build commercial. Well, we come here to build residential. So when we approve ordinances like this, I just want to see if there's any kind of communication with building and safety. That way developers don't come in with hundreds of thousands of dollars in entitlements and planning, and then get down to the end and find out that they can't build it.
One of the things that we always encourage our developers to do is that they need to research both the zoning requirements and the building and safety requirements, the building permit requirements, when doing any development. While we do try to coordinate as best that we can, obviously there are going to be building permit requirements that we, as the planning department, don't have the ability to change. However, there still is the ability to do mixed commercial and residential development. There are fire separation requirements that you do have to build into the project. And we do understand that sometimes those become quite costly and prohibitive to doing that type of development. But again, this type of development is possible. We have had requests to do it. We have had a number come through the process. And so that's why we're making the change, is because we have noted that this type is becoming more common, and we need our code to be flexible to that.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve TXT 47659.
Thank you. Please vote. Please post. Motion carries. Director?
This item will be forwarded to City Council in ordinance format.
Thank you. Item number 38, TXT 47865, applicant owner, City of Las Vegas, for discussion and possible action to amend LVMC 1912.070 and 19.18.020 regarding the short-term residential rental use by revising the description, requirements, and definition to update regulations associated with the use and to provide for other related matters. Staff is recommending approval. Staff, may we have a report, please?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this is the final text amendment that you have under consideration this evening. This is related to short-term residential rental uses. In 2008, we adopted the short-term residential rental use, and with that, that allows for rentals of residential properties for periods of less than 31 days. This is distinguished from apartment rentals or rentals of single-family residences on a more permanent basis. And so it's distinct from, say, a property owner who rents their house to a tenant for, 7 months or a year or other periods of time. Again, this only applies to what would be considered vacation rentals or any rental period that's less than 31 days. As it has stood over the past 5 years that we've had this ordinance in place, there's been a number of concerns on the part of City Council relative to the enforcement of the ordinance and the minimum standards that we have in place. In August of last year, I was directed to make a presentation to City Council on our enforcement efforts, and I was directed at that point in time to come back with some modifications to our short-term residential rental ordinance that would give the city more enforcement abilities and to reduce the impact of those rentals on surrounding single-family homes and properties. With that, I have before you this evening a proposal to make some modifications to Title 19, which is the zoning code. I want you to be aware that we're taking a number of things out of the zoning code with the intent of placing them in Title 6, which is the business licensing code. We have a separate enforcement team for our business license ordinance, our licensing compliance officers who are located within the Department of Planning, as licensing is a function of the Department of Planning. And with these additional restrictions to Title VI, we feel that we'll have a better ability to enforce the ordinance and reduce the impact. What we are proposing to do is to make the following modifications to Title VI, and we're hoping to take the changes that we have to Title 19, which you are considering this evening, along with the changes to Title VI together to City Council in April of this year, if we do have your support on the changes to Title 19. The changes that we're proposing to make is that we are going to create a new license for short-term residential rentals. We are also going to redefine perhaps how we apply room taxes. Because these rentals are for periods of less than 31 days, they will fall under the same tax structure that applies to our hotel and motel properties. And so we're going to clarify in Title VI how that is done. Also, we are proposing to add civil penalties for violation of the ordinance that will allow us to impose daily fees for not being in compliance with Title VI. We are also proposing to put limitations on the number of occupants that can be allowed in the short-term residential rental based on the number of bedrooms in the property. We're also proposing to make restrictions on parking so that parking occurs on-site, does not spill over to the street, and that no commercial vehicles are parked in residential neighborhoods. We also have additional restrictions relative to trash and how that's handled. That must be in accordance with Title IX, which deals with trash, cannot be left on the street, must be on the property, and must be in containers. We have also proposed to put additional restrictions relative to outdoor noise, that no amplified sound, boom boxes, things like that would be permitted outside of the residence. It must all be within the residence itself. We are also proposing to require fire safety inspections, a health inspection, and the installation of public safety equipment so that people who are staying in these short-term residential rentals are subject to the same safety provisions as we would require of a hotel or a motel property. Finally, one of the things that we're requesting is that the 24-hour contact information for the owner of the property, the one who is renting out the residence, be visible from the street so that if there are any concerns with the guests of the residence, surrounding property owners would have a 24-hour contact number that they could call to inform them of any of the problems. So those are the changes that we would propose, and we would request your support of this text amendment.
Thank you, Director. We'll now open it up for public comment. Does anybody wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners.
quick
Commissioner Moody?
question for the director through you, Mr. Chair. With this sign about 24-hour contact information, how will that work if there's a conflict with CCNRs about signage in a neighborhood or something like that?
That's a good question to bring up. One of the things that we have in the language of Title VI is that prior to being licensed, if there is any restrictions in their CCNRs, they have to identify that to their homeowners association. So how we would handle that is if the homeowners association is giving approval for the short-term residential rental, they would also be giving approval for the sign in the window as well.
Anybody else wish to be heard? Commissioner Truesdale?
So that they have to do all the things a motel or a hotel does? They have to keep a guest registry so they know who's in each room and...
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, yes, that is correct. They would have to keep a guest registry just as a hotel or motel would. Again, that helps us with the enforcement of the ordinance.
Is there a minimum requirement, or can these be one-day rentals, or, I mean, I'd hate to see that we're putting, for lack of rooming houses in neighborhoods as opposed to dealing with a party house issue.
Correct. One of the things that we do in the definition is we define what a short-term residential rental isn't in terms of a rooming house or a group home or those other types of residential uses. And so by proposing some additional language to the definition of a short-term residential rental, we are hoping to eliminate it trying to be anything other than a weekend rental or a weekly rental or something like that.
Does this have any effect on, quote, a sorority house, a fraternal organization house?
No, we have that as a separate use under our code.
Okay.
Commissioner Bonar?
I imagine we know where a lot of these have been. I don't imagine we know where they've all popped up. How do we make the transition from the illegal, or is there a grandfathered clause? How do we make the transition?
One of the things that we are proposing is that they will be required to apply for a new license type that we are creating. So those that currently have license to operate will have to obtain the new license type and come into compliance with the regulations that we have as part of their business license. Those that are currently operating illegally would need to obtain a license and would need to go through the process. For those that don't currently have a license, we refer those to code enforcement. So for example, if someone is offering their residential property for rental as a short-term rental and advertising that, we would refer that first to code enforcement, and then they would be brought in to obtain a license and come into compliance.
So there is no grandfather per se?
Under the licensing code, no.
Anybody else wish to be heard? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, on item 38, TXT 47865, I make a motion to follow staff's recommendations for approval.
Thank you. Please vote. Please post. Motion carries.
And this will go forward to City Council in ordinance form.
We'll now go to the citizens' participation portion of the agenda. Item number 39, citizen public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. No subject may be acted upon by the Planning Commission unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come to the podium and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited.
Thank you, Todd Farley, 240 North 19th Street. As you may be aware, in the coming years, we're going to have a real problem of a shortage of quality, low-income housing. And I really don't know how we're going to address that. But right now, if, on your way home, if you drive down Isabel or Ogden by Eastern, you will see those streets just jam-packed with cars. That's because you've got anywhere from a dozen to 24 people living in each one of those houses. And I mean, and it's not, they don't have any other place to go because they can't afford it. The minimum wage is about, what, $9 an hour or something like that. And the budget suites and the Siegel suites and that, those people cannot afford that. And I really do not know how you are going to address that. But I'd like to pull this out. If I could go to the overhead here. Maybe I'll just pass it around, it's easier. But in the early 60s, there was a whole bunch of kind of motel-like buildings that were put up for housing. The two-story with a little quad thing in the middle. And it kind of shows what, they took an old one and could fix that thing up, and it looks real nice. And maybe that would be a solution. But still, it comes back to, I don't know where you're going to put all these people, but there's a lot of people out there that cannot even afford the basic low-income housing like Siegel or Budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else wish to comment on anything? Seeing none.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Todd.
One thing I need to say. I want to congratulate my daughter and my son-in-law on their new baby boy that was born a week ago.
Congratulations.
What's his name, little Rick?
Dalton.
Dalton, that's a cute name.
Dalton Richard?
Dalton Richard. Congratulations, Grandpa.
Okay, seeing no other public comment, this meeting is concluded. Thank you.